What's up, sons? It's Blind Red with Son of a Tech once again, and today I'm going to show you guys my brand new Intel mining rig built in the Rosewell server mining case. I'm super excited to share this with you guys, and we'll get the performance numbers and everything lined out for you right after a word from today's sponsor. Today's sponsor is Coastal Crypto. Coastal Crypto can be found at coastalcryptomining.com via the affiliate link down in the description below. They don't want to take up a lot of your time, and neither do I, because I want to get into the video. They are here to help miners find parts. If you're looking for ASICs or even GPUs or any other parts, be sure to check them out. Use promo code SOAT at checkout for 5% off any purchase on the website. Welcome back. So real quick, I wanted to make a note that I made a huge mistake moving some USDT from TextBit exchange over to Coinbase, because TextBit is BEP20, which is on the Binance Smart Chain, and Coinbase only supports ERC20. I haven't made a mistake like this in quite some time, but I bring it up because just wanted to put out a reminder that you check those networks. Now, if I was to send it to crypto.com, for example, it would support both networks across the board. So I've been used to using crypto.com, and I didn't really think about it and double check. There is a petition right now for basically having Coinbase adopt BEP20 so that we can recover those additional funds. I'll leave the link to that petition down in the description below. I think it's a little ridiculous that you can't just recover them, because if it was MetaMask or anything else, it would be as simple as connecting to the Binance Smart Chain within MetaMask and then bridging them out to Ethereum. So that's kind of it. Just wanted to bring that up. Let's talk about the Intel Arc A750 mining rig. First of all, the parts are as follows. I'm utilizing a Rosewell mining case. These are the 4U server mining cases that support 6 to 8 GPUs. I found that 6 GPUs is pretty much the maximum unless you're going with a lower power draw GPU. And you can just reverse the rails depending on how you want to configure it. I actually really enjoy these mining cases, and I highly recommend, if you can pick them up secondhand for super cheap, to go ahead and do that if noise is not an issue, right? Basically, if you want to have high airflow and keep your cards cool while also keeping custom parts in there, it may be something that you want to look at. The reason we are not utilizing octo miners is because octo miners do not support resizable bar, and resizable bar is needed in this particular case for the Intel Arc A750s for their optimal performance. Now, for the power supply, I highly don't recommend this power supply in general, but I was missing a few parts and pieces to my Seagate 1300 watt, or Seasonic, excuse me, 1300 watt power supply that I did want to utilize. So we are utilizing a 1600 watt mining power supply that I had laying around, one of those gold rated ones off of Amazon. It has been functioning well for quite some time. It did run for a couple years mining with some RX 5700, so I'm not too worried about it because we're also keeping the power consumption relatively low. Next, we're utilizing the AA waves, or the AAA wave risers. These risers are fantastic, and I got a bundle of them a while ago from them directly. They sent them over, and I hadn't had a chance to really utilize them outside of the Steam mining rig, or the Steam Deck mining rig that we built. So I went ahead and put them into this rig so that I could show them off to you guys, and you can pick them up with the affiliate link down in the description. I also had to come up with a fan controller solution, because on this particular rig, what we have are 320 millimeter BG Bears B Blaster server, basically high airflow fans in the front, and then we have 4 80 millimeter Delta server fans in the back. So you push a lot of power. You can't utilize fan headers off of the motherboard with the amount of power that you're pushing through there. So this fan controller in particular, utilizes a 6-pin PCIe power, and it has a little knob to turn the amount of power Supply did the fans up and down. So basically we were able to hook up all 7 of these fans and they're running at full speed. And this is keeping the cards presumably cool. However, I do need to figure out how to check temperatures on the Intel GPUs on Ubuntu because there doesn't seem to be a way to do it. So I don't actually know how cool the cards are running. The CPU is running nice and cool, but I don't know what the cards are at. For the motherboard, we went with the MSI B550 Gaming Plus motherboard. I did have to update the BIOS to get the support for resizable bar on this motherboard, but it is supported, and that's the reason we chose this motherboard. In addition to that, to support the resizable bar, we went with the cheapest CPU available that also had video out, so I wasn't having to mess with pulling the fans out and plugging into one of the GPUs. It just makes it easier to troubleshoot if needed. So that is going to be the AMD Ryzen 5 4600G, which I picked up off Amazon for $99. The memory is special here because I found this memory quite a while ago and was utilizing it for my CPU mining rigs because it has that sweet spot of 3200 megahertz speed, which means that you can essentially get the full performance out of AMD Ryzen. And then it has a low capacity per stick at 4 gigabytes, driving the price down. However, you can get them in 2 so that essentially you can run them, you know, in not dual rank, but dual channel. And then I needed to find a way to hook up more than the 4 GPUs that would be available utilizing the B550 Gaming Plus motherboard. I had this M.2 to PCIe by 1 3.0 USB adapter that I utilized for my Steam Deck mining rig, and that performed pretty well on that. So I moved it on over to this rig and just took up one of the M.2 slots, and that seemed to function pretty well. In addition to that, I had a 500 gigabyte SSD laying around that we put the operating system on. You can get these extremely cheap for around 20 bucks now on Amazon. So just pick up whatever you want. There are possibly cheaper options at lower capacities, but typical solid state drives are just super cheap these days. There is enough, you know, on there to go ahead and possibly run a couple nodes if I wanted to, depending on if they're new coins and have a low amount of data on them. So there is that option. And because I'm running the 4600G, I also have the option of doing some CPU mining on this particular rig. For the GPUs, we want the ASRock Intel Arc A750s. There is one reference design Intel Arc A750 in there, and I have 5 of those, and then I added an ASRock Intel Arc A380 as well. Now, adding in the A380 is kind of a detriment to the 750s because it doesn't allow you to turn the intensity up, and what I found is if you turn the intensity up on the SRB miner, you can basically take the A750s from around 1300 hash a second to 1700 hash a second, which is quite a performance bump. That being said, I did want to check the A380 and it's currently in the system, and the A380 is performing quite well at 1100 hash a second. For a GPU that's around $129, this is impressive. Getting into hash rates, of course, the total rig hash rate right now as it sits is 7,189 hash a second. But that's not really the whole story because like I had said, if we turn the intensity up on the A750s, we can get better. So maybe per GPU, we'll change that up and play around with it. And then in addition to that, if we take a look at the actual pool, what you'll find, I had just rebooted this, so our overall is a little low. We haven't even been running for an hour, but our reported is actually 9.1 kilohash a second, even though the software is reporting 7.1 kilohash a second. So we're actually getting 2 more kilohash a second than anticipated. The only downside here though is no overclocking capability. Now, when I had the A750s in there alone and the intensity was set to 500, what I was getting was 500 watts for the entire rig. However, when I added the A380, I got some interesting results where we were seeing essentially on a much higher power consumption, closer to 1,000 watts for the entire rig. So at the end of the day, probably going to pull that A380 out and just leave it with the A750s because they perform better and they also run at lower power. And that makes a huge difference, right? Because at this point, what that actually means is that if we calculate what's reporting in software, we're at a loss, right? And then if we are calculating what's reported on the pool, we are actually still at a loss at 1,000 watts. However, if we were to report, the 1,700 that you get if you pull the A380 out and 100 watts per card, we actually go into profit. So I just wanted to bring that up to you guys. There's a lot of weird things going on. Part of this is primarily due to the fact that we are also utilizing a beta version of Ubuntu. We needed support for Intel, which means we needed Linux kernel 6.2. There's a couple ways to do this. And initially I had actually messed up and not realized I needed to run sudo when running the script for SRB miner. So I wasn't actually able to get it initially working on the beta for Ubuntu. But I went back to that after I upgraded the kernel for the LTS version of Ubuntu to 6.2 and found out that I needed to add the sudo, and everything seems to work. So if you want to utilize the beta, you can do that. If you want to upgrade the kernel on Linux, you can also do that as well. So either way that you want that to work out, you can go ahead and get it done. I also wanted to go over real quick with you guys because I know some people were curious on how you mine on Linux. It's pretty dang simple. So what I'm going to do here is just share with you guys a little bit of a how-to as well. So let's see. All right, there we go. So to get started mining on Ubuntu, the first thing you're going to need to do is just get the actual miner. So you can do a sudo wget, and you can just copy the Linux link off of GitHub and paste it into here, and it will download it. At this point, what you will see is that if you run an ll command, you'll have your tar file here. So at this point, you can just do sudo tar-xf and the tar file and press enter. Press ll again, and you'll have the new folder that's been unpacked. So you can then just run a change directory and move into that folder, and then you'll have your bash scripts and so on. You just basically run the sudo // saying this directory and run the guided setup, and it'll just have you put in all of your information. So this actually ends up being extremely simple. You'll name it, right? And then you'll say no for multi-mining. You'll type in the actual script. So this one, or the actual algorithm, this one is Dynex solve. You can list these if you need to as well. I believe it was Dynex solve, might just be Dynex. There we go. It's just Dynex in this particular case. And then it's going to say ask for your pool, so you can just select the pool that you want to utilize. In this case, I'm using Echo Pool and US, and then you'll put in your wallet address. You can always copy it and then just right click into PuTTY and press enter. Password would be the rig name, so we could say SOAT-Intel01, enter. We'll say, would you want to enable logging? I'm going to say no, and then it says setup complete. So you'll see here that we actually have the script now here. So to start it, we just do sudo and then the // to say run, and then the start test, and it'll begin mining. So there's a quick how-to for you guys on how to mine on Ubuntu as well. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, hit the like, comment, subscribe down below. I'm going to pull that A380 out so that my rig is profitable, and I'll see you next Tuesday.